bad. Good.
Welcome everyone to season 4, episode 145 of the Premiere Pod. I'm your host Yash Bika, joined by my co-host Tyler Chan, and in this episode, it's our finale episode of season 4. It is the annual or seasonal annual Premiere Pod awards that we typically do or always do at the end of every Premier League season. It's crazy that the end is here, May 23rd. Obviously, Tyler still has a Champions League final to look forward to at the end of this week, but the Premier League season is officially over. It's finally back on the normal schedule because obviously during COVID, the whole schedule kind of got jumbled up and a bunch of matches were played in together. But it's crazy. This has been a very long season. Started in August and is now done in May. It's just so many storylines, so many things have happened since the start of this year's Premier League. And obviously, at I guess the end of it all, Manchester City were crowned champions. Liverpool finished in second place, a point behind Manchester City, a repeat of the 2018-19 Premier League season. So heartbreak for Liverpool fans once again. But just like in that season, they also have a Champions League final to look forward to at the end of it. So maybe there is some Champions League glory coming to them this year, just like it did in 2018-19. Chelsea finished in third place. Tottenham got the last Champions League spot in fourth. And just real quickly, Arsenal got the fifth place spot. Manchester United finished surprisingly in sixth for the last Europa League spot, and then West Ham got the Europa Conference League position, even though they lost on the final day of the season. But yeah, it's been a crazy season, and the final match day kind of almost lived up to the craziness of the season we've seen this entire year. Because I think at one point, the way the season has gone, Manchester City had a huge I believe they had a huge lead in terms of having a big lead in the Premier League title race, and then somehow they started to drop points, and then Liverpool crept up behind them, and then essentially it was just a neck and neck tie of Liverpool, Manchester City. When going into the season, we thought it was going to be a four-horse title race between United, Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City, and it looked like it was going like that for maybe the first month and a half, and then United teared it off, and then at a certain point, I would say around October or November, Chelsea started to fall off as well. And then it was just all Manchester City, Liverpool. Came down to the final game of the season. Liverpool looked like they were in some big trouble early on. They went down 1-0 early to Wolves. Basically they did their job. They came back 1-3-1, but then Manchester City actually went 2-0 down against Aston Villa. And the second goal was scored by Felipe Coutinho of all people in the second half. And it was in the 65-minute mark, and it basically looked like the title was heading towards Liverpool in a miraculous way. And all of a sudden, it took literally a span of, I believe, 5 minutes. City somehow scored a barrage of 3 goals, I think in a span of 11 or 5 minutes.
It
And they
was
made
5
the
minutes,
3-2
yeah.
comeback. Yeah, 5 minutes. Ilkay Gundogan got subbed on. He made the big difference. I think he scored twice, scored once or twice in that 3-2 comeback. And basically from there, City just had all the momentum. They held on, and from there they were confirmed champions. But it was a tough one because it's a lot of people were joking. It's like, man, Steven Gerrard letting the title slip away again into City's hands.
It was unreal. Literally 2-0 down, City were to Aston Villa of all teams. And Liverpool, they didn't score yet at that time. Like it was 2-0 to Villa, but Liverpool were still tied 1-1 to Wolves. And all Liverpool needed to do was just score one more goal to lead against Wolves. And then Aston Villa just had to not lose to City. And then the title would be Liverpool's. But all of a
Out of
sudden,
all people, it was Coutinho too that scored the second goal.
yeah,
It's
Coutinho
like all the
scored it.
dream scenarios were going into Liverpool's way. And
All the storylines were there. Stevie G at the helm, leading the team as the manager. Coutinho scoring that potential game winner. And then Stevie G subs off Coutinho, and it goes downhill from there. It's just,
man.
okay, Gundogan just ruined my dreams. This man comes on, scores twice in 5 minutes. In 5 minutes! Like, the first goal, when that went in, I was like, okay, granted, probably City should score one in this game. But then when the second one went in, I was like, all right, y'all got to park the bus or something. They do not need this momentum. And then when the third goal went in, I was like, what a joke.
Like, oh my gosh.
I was like,
And
what
it
a
was
joke.
like a back post. It was like a back post finish too. There's someone just whipped in a ball. No one could stop it.
That was
And it was
was
also
top.
sad too, because I think, like you said, I think when City scored their first goal, I think that was around the time Mo Salah scored the goal to make it 2-1.
Hmm.
and Mo Salah celebrated like he had just won Liverpool the league. I mean, you could just see it in his face, and the whole Anfield crowd was erupted. And then once City made the 3-2 comeback, Anfield kind of quieted down, and then somehow there was like a rumor that started, I think, around the 85th minute, that apparently something had gone on where someone had spread the news that Aston Villa um, scored another goal to make it 3-3, which would have put the title in Liverpool's hands. And then you saw for like the next 20 or 25 seconds that the Anfield crowd just lit up and all the supporters were going crazy and like everyone was just going wild. And then I just wonder who started that rumor. Like there's like only people in there are just Liverpool fans or Wolves fans. Like who started the rumor to make it seem that Aston Villa had the 3-3, made it a
Whoever
3-3
did
game.
probably got beat up by like every Liverpool fan at Anfield because like that was you can't joke about this stuff. That is too much. I was like, mm. I watched because I was in that same scenario as many of our listeners and probably Yush where I had both the TV and my
Hmm.
iPad showing two different games, and then if I was extra, I could probably put on like the phone as well, just something like that. So I had two games
Wait,
going on.
which game
So
was
I
on the
had
TV? Was it Liverpool on TV?
I had ironically I actually had City on the TV because
Oh.
my Direct TV app, I don't know the password for it. So so I just kept it on the iPad and I
Ah,
watched
okay.
and the City game was on Peacock, but the Liverpool game was on USA Network
USA,
and that
yeah.
was only on Direct TV. So I had to watch it on the iPad.
Gotcha.
But I had both games up and I was like, I don't see City scoring or conceding, so
You're like, is my
that's
stream
definitely some fake
behind?
news. Yeah, I was like, are we just really behind or something? What's going on? I was like, what the deuce?
Oh,
So that was just a rough morning. I was like, no one
yeah.
talked to me for the rest of the day. I woke up at 8 a.m. for this. I was like,
Oh, it's like brutal
man.
stuff.
So now it's another 1 point deficit, just like in 2018. But it's a somewhat good omen because Liverpool once again Champions League final, and they won in that Champions League final. So
Hmm.
hopefully they do it again, and it'll all be worth. I looked at the reactions of all the Liverpool players after the game. They all brought their families onto the pitch, gave the round of applause to the fans, and they looked like they were in good spirits, even despite losing out the title by 1 point. But I mean, it wasn't in their control in the end of the day. They just ultimately had to do their jobs, get the win on their side, and just pray. But
Hmm.
Villa came close. At least it wasn't like a. I don't know if it was worse if Villa lost like 4-0 versus
Yeah, at least
three
you guys
two
had a little bit of
comeback.
hope. You
Yeah,
guys had
the
a little
hope
bit of
was
hope.
there, and then it was just stripped away from us by a Turkish German man in Ilkay Gundogan.
Yeah,
But
it
I mean,
it was tough.
uh, you know, it was tough. And City, they salvaged their season. They won something. Pep
Yeah,
Guardiola
that's
won
true.
the fourth Premier League title in I believe 5 seasons, which
Yes,
is an
it's kind of
insane stat.
crazy. Yeah.
And
Well,
it's not going to
six.
get any
I
yeah
think it's
or
fourth and sixth because he
fourth and
didn't win it
sixth.
his first year, and then
Mm-hmm.
he also didn't win it. He didn't win it that year that Liverpool won it. So it's like it's 2 seasons he
Mm-hmm.
hasn't won it. So it's kind
Oh,
of crazy. He's just like that's actually crazy the amount of Premier League titles he has.
it's unfair.
Yeah.
It's like oil money, but either way, it's gonna not get any easier for any other Premier League club because Erling Haaland comes to Man City next season as well. So
Hmm. Yeah, they're just got
they
stronger.
just got even stronger. There is a quote from I believe Jamie Carragher who said that he doesn't believe City is going to get better under Haaland because they already are so good. It's like they can't really get any better than what they are at right now. It's just
Hmm.
very nuanced, diminishing returns in terms of adding even more players to City. It's just for the league, I think they'll probably still hit around like what they hit this season, 93 points, maybe 100, but they're not going to go undefeated all of a sudden or something like that. It's going to be
Yeah.
still pretty close. It's just having Holland now will just give a slight edge in those big knockout games, which they didn't have when they needed a striker. So we'll see. But
He also tends to get injured a lot in the season. He tends to miss a good amount of games throughout the season. Like at least for the
mm,
past 2 years at Dortmund, he has missed
that's true.
a decent amount of games through injury. So if he doesn't fix the
Chunky
injury
man.
problem, then Yeah, he's also, I think the way he plays just lends himself to get injured a lot because he plays kind of reckless, like very like
He
high
is.
motor.
He's very much like Luka Doncic. He
Yeah,
just
all
takes a lot
all
of
in.
physical hits and goes all
Yeah.
in. And it's also chunky. So,
Mm-hmm.
but
But
yeah, that was the
yeah.
reminiscent recap of Championship Sunday. Very
Yeah.
sad Championship Sunday, at least for me. And even for, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, for Yush, it's kind of weird for you. Man, United
I mean,
lost to Crystal Palace, but they still
it was
somehow ended up in the Europa
same
League.
old, same old, same old. This whole season. Yeah, it was a pretty. I watched that game. It was not very fun to watch. Like we couldn't even string together like 5 passes to like get a shot on target. It was bad. It
Well,
was yeah. It was a very bad, and it was very, I would say, very eventful end to the season. Kind of just sums up the whole season, losing to Crystal Palace away. I think that's like 6 straight away defeats in the Premier League, um, which is just awful. I think that's like the worst run United have had throughout their entire time in the Premier League. So it's an awful, awful, awful run of form and we're in. And I'm just glad that this season is finally behind us, and we are now officially under the Eric Ten Hag era. And he actually had his first press conference today, and yeah, I think everyone is just really excited for the new era, and just looking forward to kind of cleaning house, getting the right players in, and just going forward from here. Because at least from our sake, it genuinely, I don't think it can get any worse than this season, because this season was
z-
bad.
0 goal difference, sixth
Yeah,
place. It's true. So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, it could have been
yeah,
worse. You could have been Burnley or Watford or Norwich, all relegated. But
yeah.
that was the last day as well. Last day antics. Burnley gets relegated. Leeds stays up.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's also
leads
big up to
Jesse Marsh.
Jesse Marsh, the American manager
Yeah,
who comes in for Bielsa, saves the club. So we'll see how they do
yeah,
next season. But rip
yeah,
Burnley.
yeah. I think actually a lot of people will be happy that they're gone. Just the way they play, I think there's been a really annoying nuisance to a lot of people.
They are. But I will say one of our listeners, Lath, Burnley fan. I'm sorry,
Mhm.
Lath. They'll come back
Yeah,
in a few seasons. They usually do. But they also
yeah,
did lose Sean Dyche. So I don't know how that's going to be. The
yeah.
longest tenured manager prior to him getting fired in the Premier League. And then now the
Just
longest
crazy
tenured
stuff.
manager is Jurgen Klopp, which is kind of crazy to
Yeah.
also say.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah. So it was.
that's
So
basically the
those.
recap.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
relegation and Golden Boot. Mo Salah and Son shared the Golden Boot because they both finished on 23 goals. Mo Salah finished with the most assists with 13 this season, and the Golden Glove actually got shared as well with between Ali Son and Ederson, both finishing with 20 clean sheets. So yeah, it was a. It's pretty crazy. I think this season has been eventful, but it's also been eventful for a team perspective. I feel like a lot of teams have made this season very eventful because I guess in years past you've always seen like outstanding performances from players, or yeah, I would say players like there was that season of Michu, there was the season of um, I'm trying to think right here, like Kevin De Bruyne, where he just completely lit up the Premier League. You just had like different seasons where one player just took the narrative on their own and just made the season great because it was that good of a player. But I feel like this season, um, it's been eventful, but I think it's been more of the teams making it really eventful. Like Manchester City and Liverpool being so good, Manchester United struggling all the time, Tottenham and Arsenal basically fighting it for fourth place with um, their squads and everything. So yeah, it was a good season, and I guess that lends itself into going into our awards for this season. And I
The
guess to
Premier
start it
Pod
off,
Awards.
yeah,
Here we go.
Premier Pot Awards. To start it off, we have Manager of the Season. I guess I'll go first. Um, I think whenever we've done this, I think most of the time it's usually gone to the manager that's won the Premier League. I think we've had a couple of seasons where we've kind of maybe picked someone outside of the box to show some love there. But for me, I think it has to go to Pep Guardiola. If we're talking strictly in the Premier League, I think it has to go to him. I know Tyler hates to hear that, but winning his fourth Premier League title in 6 seasons is pretty extraordinary. Um, and given the circumstances with this season, fighting off Liverpool's title charge and just basically keeping City in first place or handling those pressure packed moments in the Premier League, he did a really fantastic job. And then when City needed him to kind of make the change to help basically ignite the comeback against Villa to seal the Premier League title, he was able to make those changes, subbing on Gundogan, making some big calls. Like I think it was the game against Liverpool where Gabriel Jesus didn't start for I don't know 12 games or didn't even see Premier League action for 10. He decides to put him on the starting 11 against Liverpool. He scores a goal. So yeah, I mean, there's a reason him and Jurgen Klopp are the best managers in the world, and I think this season Pep showed again that for me he was manager of the season for the Premier League.
I was gonna say, I was like, Man City won enough already. They don't. Pep Guardiola doesn't need this award, but I will say he's an honorable mention for me. Him and Klopp
Mhm.
both, because I would say it's very nuanced between the two for how they did the season. Because it was a 1 point difference between the two teams, Man City and Liverpool, finishing in the first and second place in the table. But for Pep Guardiola, it's kind of ironic too. It's like this is kind of what we expect. Always either at the top of the table, finishing and winning the league, or at least really close and putting up a good fight in terms of scoring a ton of goals and conceding very few, which is very simple on the grand scheme of things. Like overall, it's kind of like taking like it's kind of like taking away like how much he's done, but in the grand scheme of things, it's like yes, it's like this is basically what he did. It's like here's the
Yeah.
goal, and usually he exceeds it, and it's just always like that. So ironically, I didn't pick either Klopp or Pep for the manager of the season. I picked Eddie Howe because Newcastle, they kind of have a new identity now under Eddie Howe. And we haven't talked about them ever since they were in the relegation fight for a
Hmm.
long time in the season as well. They were looking like they're going to be one of those three teams that'd be relegated and kind of in the dumps. They didn't really have an idea for how things were going to change or if fans were going to have any hope in just learning to see like what ambitions the club has, because there's always talks that they'd be bought out by that Saudi Arabian consortium, and they
Hmm.
ultimately did. And there's also just interviews from fans just being like, what's your expectations for Newcastle? It's always like they'll they just hope that they just don't get relegated, and that's like every season. And
Hmm.
certain people have always asked is like, what's the point of supporting these clubs that never win? I'm like, you just just they're just happy to be in the Premier League. That's about it.
Yeah.
But under Eddie Howe, he's basically flipped the script. They've jumped from the relegation zone all the way to 11th place, and they have, I believe, in the second half of the season when Eddie Howe took charge, he has earned some of the most points of all teams put together in the season. Like I believe he was
Hmm.
like maybe top five, something like that. It was something crazy. And this is what the team that he's barely made too many changes to himself yet. Like Bruno Guimaraes, he came in as a January transfer window signing,
Kieran
and
Trippier,
Trippier as
Chris
well.
Wood.
Chris Wood, Chris Wood was a
Yeah.
very tactical transfer. Let's just confirm Burnley relegation right there. He's like take away all their firepower, and that's literally all they bought him for. But I'm excited to see what Newcastle do under Eddie Howe, because I feel like he's also the type of manager who will develop players rather than go out and spend big. And Newcastle very much could easily do that, like spend big. But under Eddie Howe, they've basically been a new identity, and seeing how they're gonna go on for this season to the next season and beyond, it could be the start of something big foundationally for the club. So that's
Hmm.
very deep, but I picked Eddie Howe for that reason.
Yeah, I like it. It's a solid out of the box type of pick right there. And then I guess moving on to underrated player of the season. I guess for mine, technically he wasn't here for the full season. Came in the January transfer window, but for the impact he's had, I think he definitely probably deserves to be put in this mention for this award. Is Dejan Kulusevski, the person that Tottenham loaned in from Juventus? Obviously, if you played any type of FIFA, like this guy has like a lot of potential. A
Mm-hmm.
Swedish international that was playing for Juventus, is kind of on the outskirts, and then for this season they decided to loan him out, which is kind of a surprising move because when you look at Juventus' squad, it's not like they have a ton of young attackers on their team. A lot of their players tend to be a bit older, but oddly enough, the January transfer window when they loaned out Kulusevski and Bentancur to Tottenham, that was the same transfer window they bought Dusan Vlahovic. So I guess loaning them out kind of helped funded the Vlahovic move. So I guess it worked out on both parties. But Kulusevski, since he's come in, has been a game changer for Tottenham on that right side. I mean, he's just always there, like creating chances, scoring goals, making assists happen. Whenever you watch Tottenham play against the big teams, he always tends to get in the thick of it. He's a really skillful player. He's just an overall really good player, and I think he fits the Antonio Conte system so well. And without him, they definitely would not have made the push. They would have not made the push for the top four because he's been so influential in terms of creating chances and just being a third attacking option for them. Because I feel like for the longest time, since ever since Dele Ali kind of like fell off and Christian Eriksen left the club, they really haven't had a very solid third option for attack. It's always just been Harry Kane or Hyun-Min Son. And it's like if one of them gets injured, then it's only that person. But I feel like with Kulusevski, they finally have a very reliable third option. So that way it's not always on Harry Kane and Hyun-Min Son to do everything for the team attacking wise.
Mhm. With 8 assists and 5 goals. That's an insane return already.
Yeah.
And
Especially coming in just in January.
yeah, and it's pretty ironic that Juventus, nicknamed the Old Lady, decided to get rid of the young blood, Kulusevski. He doesn't really get that much playing time, I think, even at Juventus too. So hopefully he makes that big move to Tottenham for next season because they made a pretty good impact with him this season. But if he gets a full season, I'm a little scared. Not gonna lie. So we'll see how he goes. But for my pick, I do have an honorable mention as well. Jose Sa, the goalkeeper for Wolves. We thought I'd never heard of this man before prior to him
Yeah.
coming to Wolves. And after Rui Patricio left to Roma from Wolves, I thought that, and also Nuno Espirito Santo also leaving as the manager from Wolves, that they'd probably go downhill and they probably wouldn't have that prowess of having a decent offense and also decent defense to kind of stay in that middle of the table race. But Jose Sa has pulled out some crazy saves this season and basically helped on a pretty good stint in the middle of the season to get a string of consecutive clean sheets. And he kind of fell off near the end of the season, but that's also why I didn't put him as like my main winner for underrated player of the season. But for me, I'd give it to James Ward-Prowse. He is a player that we all know him for several seasons. He's basically
Mhm.
the main set piece taker for Southampton. He's always been there, basically David Beckham. And only David
Yeah.
Beckham scored more free kicks in the Premier League than James Ward-Prowse. And he's slowly developed very slowly, season by season. He's not really going to be like a superstar for any team in particular. He's just very above average, I would say. But without him, I feel like Southampton would not be where they are at 15th place. I feel like they probably would have been in that relegation zone
Yeah.
and potentially relegated. Like he's the glue. And it's very like his 10 goals and 5 assists, like that just goes to show how much he was impactful for this
Yeah.
team. And just having that kind of peace of mind that there's always going to be someone who can take free kicks and score them, be the corner kick taker, be just any set piece taker, and always put it on a dime to someone. That's huge for Southampton. And for a team that also is very prone to lose players to Liverpool or any other club in the Premier League, all their star players, James Ward-Prowse has always been there. Just he's good enough to make sure that they stay competitive, but not good enough to get bought up by another team. Ironically enough. So I would
Yeah.
say James Ward-Prowse, the little mini David Beckham.
Yeah. I like it. Some people call him a set piece merchant, but
Set piece merchant. I mean, it ain't
but he's
easy.
good.
He's the only one.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with that. Because he's good, but he's not good enough to ever, I guess, ever get bought by a top six club or big six club anytime
Mhm.
soon. But yeah, I agree with that. I think James Ward-Prowse has been a pretty good player, and I think this season he just kind of turned it up a little bit in terms of like turned it up a notch just a little bit with his free kicks and all the stuff that he provided. And now moving on to defender of the season, for me, it was kind of tough. I think there was a lot of decently good candidates this year, but I think for me, it's probably Virgil van Dijk because last year we didn't get to see Virgil van Dijk because he got injured really early in the season against Everton, and I think it was like torn ACL, right?
Yeah, because
Yeah,
Pickford jumped onto his knee.
yeah,
That
brutal
was
blow
pain.
for Liverpool. But obviously, I would honestly say after the first month, honestly. I think that first month he was a little bit shaky because obviously he's coming back from like a long term injury. But after that, he was pretty much solid, and it was always a rotation between Van Dyke or Matip, Van Dyke or Konate. It was always Van Dyke was the central glue that just kept the center backs together. and that whole defense together. And there was a reason for that because he just showed again that he still has the pace to keep up with the paciest of attackers. He still has the intelligence to read plays, basically dissect the play. He still has the passing ability. He's still calm and cool under pressure. So for me, it was just another example. He's probably the best center back or top five center back in Europe right now, and for this season especially, I think he's been the best defender in the Premier League.
I would say he's the only player that can come close to him is Joel Matip. No, just joking. The giraffe. Big shout out to him though. He stayed healthy basically all season, which is also a rarity,
Yeah,
and also just kept that performance up. But for me, ironically, I didn't pick a Liverpool player for defender of the season. I
yeah.
picked Joao Cancelo from Man City. So there you go. See, I'm picking someone from Man City. But I feel like Joao Cancelo this season, he took it up another notch in terms of being such a good Swiss Army knife of defenders when Man City really needed it most. They kind of fell apart. Man City did near the end of the season where a lot of players got injured. You got John Stones, he got injured. Emerick Laporte got
Ruben
injured.
Diaz.
Ruben Diaz, and then certain players had to be shifted around. I believe like Kyle Walker, I feel like he was out most of the season.
Yeah, he was actually
where's he
out for
been?
like the last 3 games out.
Mm-hmm.
And João Cancelo could play left back or right back depending on what's needed.
Mm-hmm. And even if you went all the way back to his Juventus days, you could see sometimes he even played like right mid at times. So you never know. And he basically earned team of the season as a left back. He's a right-footed player. So this is also
Yeah.
just insane to see. And for a player like that, for Pep Guardiola to just rely on someone who can be that Swiss Army knife to play either right or left back and also still make bombing runs through the middle as if he's a midfielder. He scored a
Yeah.
long shot this season as well. I was like, what the heck?
Mm-hmm.
So he basically does a little bit of everything. He's a very much fitter version of James Milner, except he's a lot faster and Portuguese and younger. But that's the kind of player that kind of impresses me the most. A player that's just like an athlete. He's just can play any position you put him into and still perform at a high level. So like certain players like Alaba and James Milner, as I said, those are like the kind
Mm-hmm.
of players I like to always see. And Joao Cancelo, I didn't expect that from him this season to take it up that new notch and be able to do it in multiple positions. But that's it for me. Joao Cancelo, man.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, that's a really good shout. And I think he actually was leading or leads the Premier League in terms of being the fullback with the most assists. I think it's either him or Trent, but he's up there in terms of just having insane numbers as a defender, especially a fullback. And then now going to most disappointing signing of the season. There were a couple that we could have picked from, but for me, I'm gonna actually pick a Manchester City player here. You guys probably know who I'm picking. It is Jack Grealish, the £100 million or $100 million transfer from Aston Villa. He was the star man or one of the star players of last year in the Premier League because he was such a big influential player for Aston Villa. Got called up for the England squad for Euros and did okay, I would say, during the Euro tournament whenever he was called upon. And this summer he got the big move, and I think he only finished the Premier League with like 4 goals or 4 assists or something like that. Very measly number for a guy like Jack Grealish, who was used to almost getting into double figures for the past 2 seasons. But
He was like
yeah,
a bench
this
player.
move was, yeah, literally this move was just not set up for him to be successful because there's already so many players in Manchester City that do what he does. And as we said before, Jack Grealish is the type of player that needs the ball all the time to be effective. It's very hard for him to be effective when he's just making off the runs or not getting the ball a lot. Like that's why he was so good at Aston Villa, is because he was the main guy. And when he came here, it just had a hard time struggling. And even in the biggest games against Real Madrid in the Champions League and other big Champions League games, he was either on the bench or only came on for very small cameos for 5 minutes. And that's just, for someone you pay $100 million for, you'd expect them to have more of a prominent role in the starting 11 or at least have a more prominent role on the team. And it just seemed like this season he was either playing on the bench or he would just come on for very short amount of time. And when he was coming on, he was missing his chances. He wasn't really creating a lot. He was just being typically just an average player, and it just didn't live up to the hype that Manchester City spent for to get him.
He was not set up for success. He was just like the system that Pep Guardiola has too. It's just it's not very one player centric. So for Jack
Mm-hmm.
Grealish, big oof right there. But we kind of saw it coming. We're just like, they should have got
Yeah.
Harry Kane. But ultimately, they went with Grealish just because they had money.
Yeah.
But for me, I went with another player that plays in blue, Romelu Lukaku. He was another
Yeah.
big money signing for Chelsea. Another big striker comes to Stamford Bridge, and once again, ultimately fails to really live up to the big money transfer. I believe around the upper echelons of 80 million pounds to 90 million pounds, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But in 26 Premier League appearances, only scores 8 goals. 8 goals as a
Yeah.
striker, and a Chelsea system like that under Tuchel. I mean, I don't know what's going on with Lukaku or why there's like a curse for all Chelsea strikers not named Didier Drogba at the Stamford Bridge, but it's just been a pretty
Yeah.
mess season for Lukaku.
It's
Like,
yeah. I think also like the system that Chelsea played really didn't benefit him because at Inter when he was with Inter, like the reason he was so successful was because he played with a striking duo of Lautaro Martinez, and he was basically allowed to just make bombing forwards. He was just able to run down the line, and the team would just spam through balls to him. And he was able to just
spam
basically
through
make
balls.
those runs. But I think under Chelsea, they tried turning him into a hold up type striker where he would just get the ball behind the back and just try to hold it up. And, you know, at Manchester United, Jose Mourinho also tried doing that with Lukaku, and he struggled a lot as well. And I don't think Lukaku does well in a system where he's asked to be that hold up striker. He's actually a lot better when you just um, let him kind of make runs in behind the defenders and just basically run off that. And I think he does that a lot with Belgium, and that's why he tends to do pretty well with the Belgium national team. But in the club level, I just don't think the right manager has gotten the best out of him outside of Antonio Conte at Inter.
Maybe that's a sign. Just switch. Like when Harry Kane ultimately gets bought out, just go to Tottenham. But
Yeah.
man, Lukaku, once again, makes a big move to the Premier League, fails again. So,
Yeah, it's been tough. It's been tough for him, and I guess that lends itself into the most toasted player this season. I actually have Romelu Lukaku on there because I think that the I guess the talk in terms of roasting him has slowed down a lot compared to what it was in the beginning and middle half of the season. But there was definitely a good chunk of the season where he was just getting all the memes, everything was just coming at him because he just could not score goals, and it was just a tough scene. And I think because of that, I think he's my toasted player of the season, just because yeah, there was just so many memes and jokes about him, and then he literally has not been able to pick himself back up in terms of the form and just score consistently. And he's just kind of been off and on, off and on, off and on, and he's missed a lot of open chances, a lot of chances that are right in front of you. I think it was the game against Real Madrid where he kind of missed a point blank header, and then Karim Benzema scored a header within
mhm.
minutes later. So it's just been that type of season for Lukaku. So that's why he's my toasted player of the season.
Just based on the number of memes attributed to a certain player and just the amount of roasts that have been said to a player in the season. My most toasted player of the season, it has to go to Harry Maguire, Yush's biggest nightmare, Slabhead, the man, the myth, the captain of Manchester United. I feel like I've seen him do more from just like the memes that have been put out from him like talking to that random girl in the crowd, like him leaning over like that meme, or just like those memes of him and his player rating every after every game being like a straight 6.0, or or just
Have you seen
compilations
that
on
one
YouTube.
TikTok sound where it's like Harry Maguire, and it's like the Gangster's Paradise song comes after it?
I haven't because I don't use
Oh,
TikTok until something makes it on a Twitter. I
okay.
won't see it, but
Dang.
I do see like the compilations on YouTube of just
Hmm.
it's very synonymous of like Phil Jones, Jesse Lingard, and all of them Manchester United folks. But now there's more for Harry Maguire, just doing very Harry Maguire esque things, like pulling away pens, putting in a bad tackle, missing the ball entirely, putting someone through on goal for his own goal. It's just like it's a player who's lost all confidence in himself and
Yeah.
his ability to defend for Manchester United. And I feel like he has to go. Like this is just so bad. It's gonna
Yeah.
get only worse. I feel like under Ten Hag as well. But who knows? Maybe a renaissance would come through. Maybe Varane will be healthy and he'll help out.
I think he just needs like he just can't be captain anymore. I think the pressure's just too much. It's just
It
getting
really
to him.
is.
Yeah.
And I mean, the most he's really done for since his 80 million pound move from Leicester is fund the building of the Leicester City training ground. That's literally all he's really done since moving to Manchester United. So we'll have to see. But man, most toasted player of the season, very much burnt toast. Harry Maguire has to win that award
Hmm.
for me. We'll mail him a piece of toast wherever his address
Yeah.
is in
Oh,
Manchester after the pod.
hopefully, yeah. Hopefully, he can get his form back up. But yeah, it's been a tough season for Harry Maguire, and honestly, that just lends itself into most disappointing team of the season for me. I guess you guys can all kind of predict this. Is Manchester United is my team. From the expectations we had going into the season, with all the summer signings we had, and especially after getting Ronaldo to come back, it was all about, oh my gosh, we could actually challenge for the title. Like, we're definite locks for top four. Champions League, we could make a serious run, and it was just gone disastrous ever since the month of September, ever since literally the month of August, I would say. We got knocked out of the EFL Cup in the first round against West Ham. FA Cup, we got knocked out by Middlesbrough really early on. In the Champions League, we were kind of scrapping by with results, and we somehow were able to finish top of the group. Solskjaer got fired midway through the season. We brought in Ralf Rangnick to be like consultancy A plus interim manager. We had players leave. We had fights breaking out. We just had just anything that could go wrong just continued to go wrong. And this season we finished with a 0 goal differential, most goals conceded in the like since the Premier League started for Manchester United. It's just been an awful season. I'm sure you've heard me rant about it more than enough. So for me, yeah, definitely Manchester United. It's just been that type of season for them.
I was gonna say if the writing wasn't on the wall already for who's Yosh's pick was gonna be for most disappointing team this season. It's like every other episode this season for Manchester United. But for me, I picked a different team. I feel like I'm keeping with a certain theme here of just picking teams in blue. But it's the other team across this park, across the way from Stanley Park in Liverpool, which is Everton. Everton, a team who I feel like won up Manchester United in terms of failing expectations to a team that almost got relegated this season. A team that
Yeah,
was aiming for European competition ultimately escapes relegation in the second to last game of
by
the
one
season
game. Yeah,
by one game. And they have the likes of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who I will say, granted, was injured for a good chunk of the season. Richarlison, who wasn't injured, but he just failed to really live up to the hype. And then the whole defense. What the heck was that? It's like Leeds conceded 79 goals this season, but I feel like Everton conceding 66 is not really that much better. It's like, which one's worse? You have the devil, or you have, I don't want to say anyone else, but like it's just like, yeah, it's not really great options there. But
yeah.
it's
And they started the season with Rafa Benitez, the former Liverpool manager, too, and he
mhm.
almost got them relegated.
Yeah, I mean, it was an inside job right there. Rafa Benitez is like, all right, take him down from the inside. But
Then they
even
hired Frank Lampard, the ex Chelsea legend, to be their
mhm.
manager, and he almost
And
got them relegated. He
I
needed
know he
so
got them from 16th to 16th when he first got him. So, I mean, I don't know what their expectations are for next season. Just hopefully not get relegated. But gosh dang, from all the turmoil from the fans calling out the owners and the chairman to them
oh yeah.
basically storming the field at the
Well,
85th minute. It's like,
if you think about it, they had last season. It's crazy because they literally had Carlo Ancelotti was their manager.
I
So they
know, and
literally
now he's
went.
going to a
Yeah,
Champions League final.
I know. They literally had James Rodriguez, Carlo Ancelotti. It's just yeah. It's just been a really weird time for Everton fans right now.
it's it's a joke, is what it is. It's like literally it's a joke club. But right now, I feel like they're going to take those hits because really they celebrated not getting relegated. A team this prestigious in the Premier League stormed the pitch after being safe from relegation, and it was just some madness. I was just like, why? It's like, why were they even in this predicament in the first place? So we'll see
Yeah,
how they do next season. But gosh dang, what a fail! What a
yeah.
fail! It would be even worse if they got relegated, but by the skin of their teeth, they escaped.
They survived. They survived. And then moving on to best player outside the top six. This is a guy that I actually we had put that has been, you can go back, been on Premier Pod radar since season one. It is the Leicester lad James Madison. And when he first burst onto the scene in the Premier League, it definitely looked like he was the next exciting prospect, basically destined for a big six move. in one of these years, but kind of bottomed out a little bit. And it definitely looked like last season, after last season, that he was just kind of going to be bang average. But I would say that there's been kind of a renaissance this season for James Madison, because he actually finished the Premier League season with 12 goals. And I think in total across all competitions, I think finished between 15 or 16 goals, which is a really incredible number as a midfielder. And his set piece, he's almost James Ward Prowse esque in terms of his set piece execution. He's a pretty good free kick taker. He's kind of Leicester's like go to man when it comes to set pieces. And yeah, he's just been an influential player. And I think in all the games I've watched him, he has kind of shown off that ability to create and score goals. So for me, I have to give this award to James Madison, finally getting back into the limelight and being pretty consistent this season.
The other James
Yeah.
Madison. But and even it's been a long season for him too. He didn't get the starting gig. He lost it after having
Yeah.
those high expectations. Then he had to earn it back this season. So it's a big,
Yeah.
big renaissance story for James Madison. But for me, my best player outside the top six is Declan Rice. He's a player
Ooh.
that he was destined for bigger top six clubs, I feel like last summer, but he was just too expensive and ultimately couldn't make the
He's
move.
leaving this summer though, because he's not re-signing. He
Yeah,
has like publicly said he's not re-signing. He's definitely gonna leave.
So West Ham, I hope you enjoyed it. One of the best center defensive English players in the Premier League. He's probably going to go to, I want to say Manchester United. I'm not going to lie, but
Really, I think it's gonna be Chelsea, because he was
Chelsea.
from the
Oh,
academy
well,
there, and
that's
he's good
true.
friends. Like he's like best friends with Mason Mount, and they kind of need to replace that position because all their center mids are getting old, like Jorginho and Conte.
hmm
Um, so I feel like that. I don't. I feel like the momentum's kind of like. I feel like Declan actually might prefer a move to Chelsea, going back to his youth club over there.
That would make sense because also on top of that, London has both Chelsea and West Ham, so it wouldn't be that much of a move for him. And
Exactly.
but in terms of need, though, I feel like Manchester United would probably shell out more because they definitely need a CDM. They got Fred and McSauce, so it's like probably Rice would help out. But I mean, we'll see. But I wouldn't be surprised he went to Chelsea, even though Chelsea tend to not buy their own old youth players. They just give them out. It's like, all right, go away, 80 million. it's like it's like we don't need De Bruyne, Salah, or any players like that. We'll just we'll just buy other players. So we'll see. But Declan Rice, there we go. One of the top CDMs in the league. I don't know why West Ham have a knack for developing really good center defensive mids. Like Suchek was one last season as well. Did all right this
Yeah.
season. Not as good, but nevertheless, these two in the pairings in the middle of just always being able to go box to box, score the occasional goal, rip an occasional long shot, and also be playmakers. That's a rare
Yeah.
thing. And to have both of them at West Ham, that's big. And that's what helped them go pretty far in the Europa League to semifinals and ultimately finish in seventh in the table. So there you go.
Hmm.
Declan Rice. Next season, definitely will not be able to qualify for this award as he's probably going to a top six club.
Yeah. He's finally gonna make the big move that we've been predicting, or everyone keeps reporting for the past 2 seasons. He's finally going to make it.
Mhm.
And then surprise team of the season, I'm going to pick Arsenal for mine because I would say that our expectations for Arsenal going into this season were tempered or so. But especially after the first 3 games of the season, it was kind of disaster mode for him. It was like, is Arteta out? I think I predicted actually that I think Arteta would get the sack, but credit to Arsenal, they stuck through him, or they stuck by him actually. Because after that first 3 games of the season, 3 straight defeats, negative goal differential at the bottom of the table, they climbed their way out of it and eventually looked like they were in pole position to grab that fourth spot. But unfortunately, their young squad kind of caught up with them, and the fatigue of the season with losing some key players meant that they lost to Tottenham, lost to Newcastle, and basically had to settle for fifth place. But um, kind of the conversation I saw with a lot of Arsenal fans, especially after the beginning of this season, where they lost 3 straight games. If you would have told them that they would have finished comfortably in fifth place, they would have taken it. And yeah, the expectations changed a bit when they were kind of in that fourth spot or gunning for that fourth spot. Pretty like they were just basically in that race to get fourth place. But I still think to get fifth place from where they were when they started the season, especially with this really young, inexperienced squad, I think that's a big surprise and definitely a big kudos to Arsenal and Arteta. I don't know going forward, is Arteta the guy to help them win a title or help them win a trophy or to help them get to where they want to go ultimately. But I think he's laying down the right foundation and the right pieces for maybe someone else to come in and take it one step further. But I have to give credit to Arsenal because I think they've done a really good job of kind of settling themselves down and basically righting the ship from the disaster from the start of the season.
Hmm. We anticipated that they would probably make a big push like this to get European competition at the beginning of the season, just because they had no other competitions to worry about. It's just like just focus on getting as high in the table as you can, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
Liverpool did a few seasons ago. But they were a little bit further on in the road where they had some youth players, but a lot of their players are just nearing their prime, and they made
Mm-hmm.
Champions League instead of just fifth place. But for Arsenal, like yeah, this is like one of the youngest teams in the league on average, based on just starting
Yeah.
11, if not the youngest. So for them to do this, it's going to be exciting to see what they do for the following seasons. But for me, my surprise team of the season, I have to give it to Brighton Hove Albion, a team that usually is very bang average. I feel like Yush has an affinity to try to say they're going to get relegated, much like I tell Crystal Palace fans that they're going to get relegated. but but Brighton, they're a big surprise. They brought in a certain player, Cucurella, who didn't really do too much this season, but still did
That
a
was
decent impact on the
huge
left wing.
fullback. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge signing as well, just in general. And also just certain players they retain, like Basuma, he stayed in, and then Moap. I can't say his name. It sounds like a meme, but Moapu or something like that from Zambia. I'm butchering
Oh,
his name.
and Wapu, yeah.
Yeah, like he's kind of like a breakout star from the season, and also just having Sanchez in goal after losing the quarterback for the Colts, Matt Ryan. it's
Yeah, and
a weird thing to say.
McAllister, very, very good player as well. Danny Welbeck actually has been providing a good amount of goals, and they also have a really young, kind of exciting prospect midfielder in Moise Casiero, who a lot of people kind of basically say he's basically the kind of Ecuadorian version of Kante in terms of like his
Mm-hmm.
ability to be like that kind of box to box midfielder that's always going to sweep up play and just be just the guy that's going to cover up tracks for everyone.
It's a very much like a bunch of potential good prospects that can potentially blossom to like something bigger. And
Mm-hmm.
it kind of reminds me of like Southampton before they got into this little run of like not having too many players that are attractive
Yeah.
to other clubs. But for Brighton to do it, I was surprised. Graham Potter is doing a really good job at Brighton. Who knows how long he'll stay at the club? I feel like he might get poached by a bigger club eventually, finishing in ninth place with basically a community squad like this and developing all these players and pulling in certain big names like that. It was pretty surprising. So I think for Brighton, I'm not sure if they're going to continue to be like this for seasons and moving on from here, but finishing where they did at ninth place this season, you got to give them some kudos there. And even if you look at like their goal difference at a -2, they didn't concede they didn't like score that many or concede that many, but they're very much able to get the results when they needed to and stay in that top half of the table.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to
They
say,
beat some pretty
Brian
good teams.
surprised me. Yeah, they beat some pretty
They
good
beat some
teams as
pretty big
well.
teams. Yeah.
So there you go, Brian Hove Albion.
Yeah. So that's a solid shot. I like it. And then um, going into our last three awards right here, we have goal of the season. Tyler and I were actually talking about before the podcast started. This season, for some reason, there wasn't that really outstandish Andres Townsend esque goal where it's just that's a clear cut winner. That is the number one. That's the best goal. There were a lot of good goals, but not that one. I would say in my eyes, that one great goal. So for me, I'm going to pick Ronaldo's strike against Tottenham. It was the long range effort when they were playing at Old Trafford, where he basically ripped one from like 30 yards, and it was to me, I just picked it because it was a very vintage Ronaldo goal, like way back in the day when you would just see him just rip long shots from 30, 40 yards and they would just go in because his shot power was ridiculous. This one had the shot power, but also had the accuracy and it was just placed perfectly. And especially in this day and age where it's all about analytics and kind of, it was basically all analytics where they kind of discourage people from just like shooting from distance. It was pretty cool to see like one of those goals kind of come back into style or just see one of those goals get scored because you don't see that too often nowadays of just people ripping a shot from 30 or 40 yards. Um, because yeah, it's just not really the best thing to do analytical wise. But for me, I think that's my goal this season.
I'd always like a good long shot. It's like I don't care what the
Yeah.
analytics say. It's just like if it's open, just go for it. You never know.
Yeah.
You never know if the goal is gonna butterfingers it or if a deflection might carry it through. Or if it's just a
Yeah.
windy day. It might put some
Yeah.
mad bend on it. But that Ronaldo goal is also one of the goals that kind of came to mind first in terms of goals of the season. Very iconic right there with Ronaldo with the sweet right after as
Yeah.
well. Can't really get old of, or can't really get sick of that because, I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty cool. But for me, my goal this season, it has to go to Mo Salah's solo skill run against Watford when
Mm.
he basically just ran up the right wing and he was triple teamed. He had literally 3 players surrounding him, and he still managed to dribble his way out of that little hole that you got chucked into, and then finished it with a finesse shot to far post. Like that kind of skill is something that you've seen like a rec league, but to see it on the professional level, granted it was Watford as the opponent. He did a very similar skill run against Man City as well, if you want to put in that
In the
argument,
same
but
season.
in the same season, it was almost like maybe 3 games apart or something like that. It
Yeah.
was within the same
That
month or
was
two.
when that was like when Salah like it was entering kind of like a weird like entering like a stratosphere of like, oh my gosh, he could win the Ballon d'Or type
Mm-hmm.
level.
It was before the AFCON when everything
Ah,
went
yeah.
down, but that was peak Salah right there. That those goals, and I mean, I miss that Salah. I'm not gonna lie, when he had the ball control to be able to and the confidence to do something like that. But that would be my goal this season. It's very much like a Salah-esque kind of crazy goal that comes every season here or there. But once again, as you just mentioned, there wasn't really a Ali Sun header or a crazy goal that we can both just point at, be like, oh, that
Yeah.
Rabona from Lamella. Yeah, that's definitely it. It's like this season, if a Premier League goal wins the Pushkas Award, then it's some BS. It's gonna be some
Mo
Salah versus
Salah gets
Everton
his
level
second
stuff.
Puskas.
Yeah, it's like maybe
Oh
some
man.
cheese. So that's the goal of the season. Probably the hardest one to describe on the podcast for all of our audio listeners.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to just Google it or finding on
Yeah.
YouTube. Just Google Ronaldo versus
Exactly.
Tottenham goal or Salah versus Watford or Man City goal. So there
Hmm.
you go.
Yeah.
Interactive portion of the podcast.
Yeah. Go out and watch those goals because definitely if we pick them out, they're good ones to watch and definitely worth seeing again.
Mhm.
And then finally, player to watch next season. For me, I actually have a guy that just got transferred over to Aston Villa today on May 23rd. It was announced. It is Boubacar Kamara, a defensive midfielder from Marseille. He's young. He's like 22 years old. And it's a pretty big transfer because this guy was actually kind of linked to some big clubs. And if you didn't know, Marseille actually qualified for next season's Champions League to be in the Champions League. So he was actually leaving Marseille to join the side that finished in 15th place in the Premier League, which is Aston Villa. So it's a pretty big switch for someone going from guaranteed Champions League football to Aston Villa. So it must have been maybe some Stevie G kind of magic. Maybe he can mold him into like a more complete midfielder. But yeah, I'm excited to watch him play because I've heard a lot of good things about him. He's a really good defensive midfielder. Can basically almost is the type of player Manchester United need but didn't sign. So he's a really good, just breaking up play. And yeah, I'm just excited to watch him and see what he can do for Aston Villa because he's definitely been one of the more sought out, I guess, young players in the French league, and he's coming to the Premier League. So I'm excited to see what he does next season.
I'm not gonna lie, I do not know who this man is, Kamara. I googled him though. He has a lean
Yeah,
body type, so that's very meta
yeah.
in FIFA. But for a player like that to jump all the way to Aston Villa, maybe he just really wanted to play in the Premier League, or maybe he really wanted to have CBG as his coach and play with Coutinho. And he's probably going to get a big pay boost just being in the Premier League itself. But we'll
Yeah.
see.
And if you,
Like
I
Kamara,
will say, if you guys don't know him, he's got a 80 rated card on FIFA 22. So
yeah, an 88 rated special card. There you go. Look at that.
yeah.
Okay, impressive for someone I don't really know too much about. 50 shooting, man. He didn't score nothing next season.
I
We'll
told you,
see.
I told you he's a defensive midfielder.
Oh gosh. But for me, this one player to watch next season. There's so many I feel like that came through in January transfer window
Mhm.
that it's a little hard to pick. but I feel like my pick's a little biased. I will admit. I will say my pick is Luis Diaz for Liverpool, a player that
Mm,
very quickly got assimilated to that Jurgen Klopp style. I thought he would take a few months to come off the bench here and there and score a goal, maybe get an assist here and there, and then get a run in. But no, like Klopp just threw him into the fire, started him in some big games really early on, and he's been one
hmm
of our key cornerstone players to making a big spark and making a run to get the win, make a comeback, or getting that go ahead goal to just be like, all right, floodgates are open, let's go, and pick up
hmm
the tempo and bring that flair that is kind of missing at times from games. But Luis Diaz is, we all knew he was going to be good, which is one of the things why I was like, I don't know if I should pick him. But the fact that he can potentially be even better than what we thought is what kind of got me thinking. It's like, ooh, maybe he takes that next step to see, we've seen him for half a season. What will he look like for an entire season? So
Yeah.
could he be that next star player for Liverpool? Because as Firmino, Mane, and Salah get a little bit past their prime, they need to have the new stars come through. Jota, I feel
hmm
like he's above average. He's not. I feel like we'll be on the level of Salah, Mane, or Firmino. But Luis Diaz, though, we're seeing little sparks where it's like, oh, he could be the next big thing. So
Mm,
we'll
yeah.
see. That's my pick for player to watch next season, and he's still relatively young too. So
hmm Yeah, I like it. I like it. I first got introduced to Luis Diaz when I was covering like the Copa America, and when he scored a bicycle kick against Brazil, I was like, oh, this
mm-hmm.
guy. And he basically was a very underrated player in Copa America. I think he scored 4 goals in the tournament, so he's been on my radar since then. And Liverpool definitely scooped up a really good player in the making. And I like you said, I'm excited to see what he does with another full season at Liverpool. See what he does, what he can do for the team. And then I guess for the last award, it's a combination of Tyler and I both decided on this one. We have Player of the Season, the what was it? I guess you call
The
it
Premier
the best
Pod.
award. Yeah, the Premier Pod Player of the Season. So this is better than the PFA Player of the Season. So whoever wins this, it's got a lot of word to it. But for us, Tyler and I both agreed that we decided that for the first time since we've been uh, doing the Premier Pod, that the Premier Pod Player of the Season will go to Hyunmin Son, the player for Tottenham Hotspur. He has the person that also finished with the Golden Boot alongside Mo Salah with 23 goals. And I will put out that all those goals were non-penalty goals, so 23 non-penalty goals for Hyunmin Son. He had a fantastic season for Tottenham, and my reasoning for putting him in as player of the season was because during the early half of the season when Nuno was still manager, there was still a lot of talk about Harry Kane wanting to leave. It honestly looked like Harry Kane was just not into playing for Tottenham anymore. Like he legit sat out, I think, during the entire August transfer window, he basically sat out and didn't play because there was that little glimmer of hope that he could make the move to Man City. So the only player that was really keeping Tottenham afloat during that really turbulent time and before Antonio Conte came in was Hyunmin Son. He was the only one creating chances, scoring goals. And when Antonio Conte came in, he basically took Son to another level. And this is the first time Son has actually won the Golden Boot. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he's just had a fantastic season. It's been a really cool one to watch for him to score 23 non-penalty goals. So yeah, I think Hyun Son, he's just been fantastic, and yeah, he just deserves all the praise because he's been one of the key players for Tottenham and one of the big reasons why they're now in fourth place and will be playing in Champions League next season.
And I feel like for me, it was very much a key part of his consistency throughout the season, basically. Because Mo Salah, I will say, was a very close second for me. Mo
Mm-hmm.
Salah, he's the top goal scorer, most assists, but it's just that second half of the season, he just kind of vanished just after
Yeah.
AFCON. And I was like, man, I don't know, but Heung-min Son, he he basically was consistent the entire season, and despite all the turmoil and everything, and having a Luis Suarez-esque season in terms of just scoring all of his goals non-penalty, like you got to give props to that. And it's very much a little under the radar in terms of player of the season. He's a player that did get recognized in like the starting 11 for best player in the Premier League season, but
mm-hmm.
I feel like for a team that or a player that single-handedly almost carried the team all the way through to getting top four with the help of Kulishevsky and Kane ultimately in the second half of the season. He basically was always there, always putting in the work, and wasn't really injured at all this season as well. So
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
top of that, it's pretty miraculous how good of a season Sun has, and I'm not sure he's gonna win this award with any other pods or other companies or any other associations, but for us, he gets the award. The first Asian player, I believe,
Yeah.
that'll get player of the season. Maybe the only one. Who knows? Unless it's like in 20 years from now, it's some breakout star joins the Premier League, but you never know. But Human Sun,
Yeah.
player of the season for the Premier Pod. Congratulations to
Yeah.
Sun.
Let's go.
Hopefully
Love to
he
see it.
reaches
The
out to
Asian
us.
excellence. We'll
I'm a
mail
big
the award
fan.
in.
So there we go.
uh, yeah, I totally agree with everything Tyler said. The consistency was also a big thing. He was just from the start of the season to the end. It just seemed like he was popping up all the time. Slow and steady wins the race. And he kind of just took the tortoise route where he just slow and steady wins the race. And look where he is, sharing the
The
golden boot
tortoise
all
route.
at the end of the season. Yeah.
He is
So
he is a very fast man, ironically enough. But
yeah.
there you go.
But yeah, that's been the end of our awards. It's been a pretty fun season, like we said. It's crazy how fast everything has gone by in terms of the season starting, all the expectations with all these teams, the disappointments, the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of the season. It was another crazy Premier League season that kind of lived up to a good amount of the hype. And yeah, I'm glad that you guys took the time. I guess most of the time, like I know we took a bit of like a 2 month break because both of us, Tyler and I, both moved during the middle of the season. But yeah, it's been fun kind of covering the league during these 9 months that it's been on, just covering week in and week out and all the storylines that come out. So I think we always say it, but just want to point it out over here as our final episode of this season that we appreciate everyone taking the time to listen or at least hop on the show or anything of that nature, because it's been a long season and we do appreciate all the support we get and everyone that tunes into the show and listens to it, because yeah, we do it for you guys and it's fun to share our thoughts out there, and it's great to see that some people are resonating with them and listening to them. So uh, we appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. And I will say too, for the listeners and the Premier Pod accolades as well, if we were to throw out awards, Yosh and I recently mentioned in one of our other recent pods, but we broke 4,000 all-time downloads, and more recently we've been hitting some pretty high average weekly listeners for downloads as well. So it's been
Mm-hmm.
at an all-time high, and it's kind of a shame that the season's ending right as we're hitting all these highs, but we'll be back in a bigger way as well next season in
Yeah.
August. It'll be a big summer. Unfortunately, there's no World Cup. Otherwise, we would have covered some of those matches over the summer, but there's nothing really going on. So we'll
Yeah.
also be on international break, I guess, or not international break, just summer break.
Summer
And
break.
we'll be back in we'll be back in August. But
Exactly.
yeah, it's been big things and one of the biggest seasons, at least for us in the Premier Pod, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Made some changes midway through the format of the show throughout the season. So yeah, it's crazy. Season 4. And the first season, ironically, the season that Liverpool finished 1 point behind City was the first season we started doing the podcast, which was the 2018-19 season. So it's crazy that it's already been four. Yeah, it's been 4 seasons for us, but we kind of went off like a different season marker because of COVID and like Project Restart kind of threw everything a little bit differently. But yeah,
Mhm.
it's been crazy that this much time has gone by, and now we're ending this season, but then gearing up for season 5 and seeing all this cool stuff that'll happen there. But I guess, as we always say, that you can listen to the show. You can follow us, give us a follow at the Premier Pod to watch video versions of this podcast on YouTube. You can also give us a follow at the Premier Pod on Instagram and Twitter to send us any questions, DMs, and we'll be sure to respond to them. And any future topics that we could use for next season's pod, more than welcome. And if you listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, it would be great help to us if you could leave us a rating or review. It helps us out, helps gets us boosted to other people as well. But if not, simply taking the time to listen or sharing the podcast with someone that you may know that is a soccer fan is more than appreciated. We appreciate the help any way we get it. And yeah, that kind of wraps up season 4, episode 145 of the Premier Pod, the Premier Pod Awards. So thanks again for listening. Peace.
Peace.